On 16 December 1944, the Ardennes Forest trembled under a German onslaught. Snow fell heavily, blanketing columns of Army Group B, commanded by Field Marshal Walter Model, as they advanced through dense, low-hanging clouds. 6th Panzer Army, led by Sepp Dietrich, carved through the northern sector with relentless momentum. 5th Panzer Army under Hasso von Manteuffel pressed alongside, while 7th Army, directed by Erich Brandenberger, anchored the southern flank. Their target was 1st United States Army, commanded by Courtney Hodges, holding defensive lines across rugged, snow-choked terrain. From the south, 3rd United States Army, led by George S. Patton, began maneuvering to counter the threat. Amid the chaos, American artillery unleashed a new weapon, shells that detonated in mid-air, their noses fitted with compact radio sets. These proximity fuses, employing a Doppler beat signal, sensed the ground's reflection and triggered consistent low-altitude airbursts, typically around 30 feet over attacking infantry, rather than burying into frozen earth. The bursts shredded exposed troops with lethal precision. The German counteroffensive launched to seize Antwerp, and fracture Allied lines opened on a roughly 60-mile front of forested hills and narrow valleys. Overcast skies, thick with clouds, grounded most Allied aircraft in the opening days, leaving artillery as the backbone of resistance. The Proximity-Fuze, developed under intense secrecy and known in theatre as POZIT, transformed the battlefield. Its radio sensing ensured reliable airbursts, without the need for manual timing. To prevent capture, the device had been withheld from land combat in Europe until late 1944. Authorization for its use arrived as the Ardennes offensive began, with stocks positioned under theatre control for rapid deployment. This marked the first large-scale employment of proximity fuses for ground artillery on the Western Front, following their extensive naval use since 1943. Artillery units entrenched along ridgelines and village perimeters integrated these fuses into their fire missions, targeting German infantry and armor advancing through snow-laden draws. The first days saw American positions strained under the weight of the German push. 1st United States Army faced relentless assaults with 6th Panzer Army driving toward key road networks. 5th Panzer Army exploited gaps in the center, while 7th Army sought to envelop weaker sectors. Hodges' forces, outnumbered and battered, relied on artillery to disrupt German momentum. Proximity-fused shells proved devastating against infantry forming in woods or moving along exposed roads. A single round could scatter shrapnel widely overhead, far more effective than impact fuses that often failed in soft snow or uneven terrain. The fuse's design allowed gunners to fire without precise range adjustments, a critical advantage in the fog and haze that shrouded the Ardennes. As German columns advanced, American artillery crews worked under grueling conditions. Shells were hauled through knee-deep snow to gun positions where crews operated in sub-zero temperatures. The proximity fuse required no special handling for field batteries and fitted seamlessly to standard 105mm and 155mm rounds widely used by U.S. forces. Its combat reliability was high, with airbursts consistently occurring near the intended height window, turning barrages into a storm of steel that negated the cover of trees or shallow trenches. By the third day, reports from forward observers noted German units hesitating to mass in open areas wary of the unseen explosions raining from above. The German plan hinged on speed and surprise, exploiting the Ardennes terrain and weather to neutralize Allied air and artillery superiority. Model's forces expected to overwhelm American defenses before reinforcements could arrive. Yet the proximity fuse disrupted this calculus. Artillery batteries positioned behind villages and ridgelines delivered barrages that broke up infantry assaults before they could reach American lines. In the northern sector, especially around Elsenborn Ridge from 17 to 19 December, gunners fired large numbers of proximity-fused rounds, targeting German troops assembling in wooded draws. The low-altitude bursts scattered shrapnel with devastating effect, forcing German commanders to reconsider their tactics. The fuse's impact was not immediate across all fronts. Limited stocks under strict theatre control meant only select batteries received initial supplies. Commanders prioritized its use in areas of heaviest German pressure, particularly where infantry relied on cover to advance. By the fourth day, as clouds persisted and air support remained grounded, the Proximity-Fuze had become a lifeline for beleaguered American units. Its miniature radio set delivered dependable airbursts that time fuses could not match in those conditions. This technical edge, combined with the tenacity of Hodges' troops, held the line against Model's ambitious thrust. The German counteroffensive, spanning 16 December 1944 to 25 January 1945, aimed to split Allied forces and seize Antwerp. Army Group B, under Field Marshal Walter Model, drove through the Ardennes' roughly 60-mile front, exploiting dense forests and heavy snow. 6th Panzer Army, commanded by Sepp Dietrich, targeted the northern shoulder, while 5th Panzer Army, led by Hasso von Manteuffel, struck the centre. 7th Army, under Erich Brandenberger, pressed the southern flank against First United States Army, commanded by Courtney Hodges. 3rd United States Army, led by George S. Patton, raced north to reinforce. Overcast skies persisting until 23 December crippled Allied air support, leaving artillery to bear the defensive burden. Proximity-fused shells, detonating at low altitude, typically around 20 to 30 feet, shredded German infantry in open fields and under tree cover where traditional shells often failed. Their release in December marked the first large-scale employment of proximity fuses for ground artillery on the Western Front, following extensive naval use since 1943. In the Malmedy-Stavelot-Staumont corridor, the northern sector became a crucible of resistance. Units of the 30th Infantry Division fortified villages and road junctions, their positions battered by German armour and infantry. Corps artillery positioned on ridgelines unleashed barrages with proximity fuses as stocks arrived. These shells, requiring no manual timing, burst reliably above targets, scattering lethal fragments over attacking troops. Unlike Gray's fuses, which often sank into snow proximity, fuses ensured consistent anti-personnel effects. Gunners fired hundreds of rounds daily, targeting German troops massing in draws or advancing along narrow roads. The fuse's miniature radar sensed the Doppler beat from ground return and triggered airbursts at approximately 20 to 30 feet, 6-9 meters above ground. Around Bastogne, the battle's heart, American forces faced encirclement. German infantry used forest cover to approach, expecting protection from artillery. Proximity-fused shells shattered this assumption, bursting through canopy to rain steel on forming units. Artillery crews operating in sub-zero cold maintained fire discipline despite dwindling supplies and relentless pressure. Ammunition was the constraint batteries fired in the hundreds per day under tight theatre control. Forward observers struggling through fog and snow reported German units breaking under airbursts, their formations disrupted before assaults could coalesce. Patton's 3rd United States Army, driving north, relied on these barrages to weaken German lines during relief efforts. The proximity fuse, designated variable time and code-named POZIT for Army use, was a technical marvel. Its radio transmitter and receiver, packed into the shell nose, emitted a signal that detected Doppler shifts as the projectile neared the ground. This triggered detonation at low altitude, typically around 30 feet for field artillery, ideal for anti-personnel effects. Unlike time fuses, which required precise range calculations, proximity fuses adapted to uneven terrain and snow, reducing misfires. Their use in Europe was deliberately delayed until December 1944 to prevent German capture and reverse engineering. Theatre commanders, aware of the fuse's potential, prioritized its distribution to artillery units facing the heaviest assaults. German commanders, expecting weather to blunt Allied firepower, underestimated this innovation. Snow and forest cover intended to shield their troops offered little protection against airbursts. In the northern sector, especially around Elsenborn Ridge, from 17 to 19 December, 6th Panzer Army's advance slowed, as proximity-fused barrages disrupted infantry support for armour. Manteuffel's 5th Panzer Army, pushing toward Bastogne, faced similar setbacks with troops caught in open assembly areas. Brandenberger's 7th Army, probing southern defences, encountered relentless artillery fire that negated terrain advantages. The fuse's high combat reliability forced German units to disperse, slowing their momentum. American artillery crews adapted quickly to the new technology. Training emphasized standard procedures, as the fuse required no special handling, Shells were loaded into 105mm and 155mm howitzers fired alongside conventional rounds. Warnings were issued to friendly aircraft, as airbursts at low height posed risks to low-flying planes. By 24 December, as skies cleared, Allied air support joined the fight, but artillery remained the linchpin. Proximity-fuses allowed gunners to target German troops in woods and draws where observation was limited, amplifying the defensive stand. By 24 December, as skies cleared, Allied air support joined the fight, but artillery remained the linchpin. Proximity-fuses allowed gunners to target German troops in woods and draws where observation was limited, amplifying the defensive stand. The Ardennes offensive, launched on 16 December 1944, aimed to fracture Allied lines and capture Antwerp. Field Marshal Walter Model's Army Group B, comprising 6th Panzer Army under Sepp Dietrich, 5th Panzer Army, led by Hasso von Manteuffel, and 7th Army, commanded by Erich Brandenberger, pressed against First U.S. Army, directed by Courtney Hodges. 3rd United States Army under George S. Patton drove north to relieve beleaguered garrisons. Model's forces drove through an opening front roughly 60 miles wide, exploiting dense forests and heavy snow. The Proximity-Fuse, a compact radio device known as POZIT, transformed artillery's role. Its low-altitude airbursts, typically around 20 to 30 feet, devastated German infantry, negating the cover of snow and forest. Released for ground combat in December, it marked the first large-scale employment of the device on the Western Front after extensive naval use since 1943. By late December, its use expanded with theatre commanders, authorizing missions against troop concentrations and road columns. In the Malmedy-Stavelot-Stoumont corridor, the 30th Infantry Division anchored defences along icy roads and villages. German armour and infantry, exploiting fog and overcast, pressed hard, but proximity-fused shells disrupted their assaults. Artillery batteries positioned on high ground fired hundreds of rounds daily, each round's miniature radar triggering bursts in the intended low-height window above attacking troops. Unlike Gray's fuses, which often sank into snow proximity, fuses delivered consistent anti-personnel effects. Gunners battling sub-zero cold and dwindling supplies maintained fire discipline. The cold line of logistics held, batteries moved and expended tons of ammunition under sustained fire week after week. German commanders, banking on weather to shield their advance, faced a grim awakening. Proximity fuses nullified the Ardennes' natural defences, turning forests into kill zones. Manteuffel's troops, probing toward Bastogne, cursed the unseen bursts that tore through their ranks. 6th Panzer Army stalled near Elsenborn Ridge, struggled to mass infantry under relentless artillery fire. Brandenberger's 7th Army, navigating southern valleys, found road columns broken up by well-timed airbursts. The fuse's high combat reliability forced German units to disperse, slowing their advance and exposing them to counterattacks. Model's plan, reliant on speed, began to unravel as American artillery exploited this technical edge. The Proximity-Fuse, codenamed POZIT, was a closely guarded innovation. Developed to counter air threats, its adaptation for ground use marked a tactical shift. Its compact shell nose package housed a radio transmitter and receiver that detected ground reflection and Doppler beat to trigger detonation at low altitude, typically around 30 feet for field artillery. Unlike time fuses, which required precise range calculations, proximity fuses adapted to uneven terrain and snow-reducing duds and bury-in impacts. Their use in Europe was restricted until December 1944 to prevent capture with stocks tightly controlled. Theatre commanders, recognizing their value, prioritized distribution to artillery units facing massed infantry. Warnings to Allied aircraft ensured safe skies as bursts at low height posed risks to very low-flying planes. As weather cleared around 23 December, Allied air forces struck German supply lines, but artillery remained the defensive cornerstone. Proximity fuses allowed gunners to target concealed positions where traditional fuses faltered. In wooded draws and assembly areas, German troops expecting cover faced devastating barrages. The fuse's simplicity, requiring no special handling beyond standard procedures, enabled rapid adoption. Artillery crews hauling shells through snow fired in the hundreds per day under theatre control. This relentless fire, paired with Hodges' defensive stands and Patton's counterthrust, blunted the German offensive. By late December, the salient's momentum waned with proximity fuses, proving a critical factor in disrupting Model's ambitious drive. By late December, the salient's momentum waned with proximity fuses, proving a critical factor in disrupting Model's ambitious drive. The German counteroffensive, launched on 16 December 1944, aimed to seize Antwerp and split Allied forces. Field Marshal Walter Model's Army Group B with 6th Panzer Army under Sepp Dietrich, 5th Panzer Army, led by Hasso von Manteuffel, and 7th Army, commanded by Erich Brandenberger, pressed against 1st United States Army, directed by Courtney Hodges. 3rd United States Army, under George S. Patton, pushed north to break the German encirclement. Proximity-fused shells detonating at low altitude, typically around 20 to 30 feet, shredded infantry in forests and draws, where snow and terrain offered false cover. As skies cleared around 23 December, Allied air forces struck, but artillery employing the POZIT proximity fuse remained the linchpin of defense. In the northern sector, along the Malmedy-Stavelot-Staumont corridor, the 30th Infantry Division held road networks against 6th Panzer Army's assaults. Artillery batteries entrenched on ridgelines fired hundreds of proximity-fused rounds daily. Each round's miniature radar triggered airbursts within the intended low-height window above attacking troops. Unlike Gray's fuses, which often sank into snow proximity, fuses delivered consistent anti-personnel effects. German infantry massing in wooded areas faced relentless barrages that negated their cover. Gunners battling frost and fatigue maintained fire discipline despite limited ammunition. The cold line of logistics held, batteries moved, and expended tens of tons of ammunition under sustained operations. Forward observers struggling through haze reported German units scattering under airbursts, their assaults disrupted before reaching American lines. German commanders, expecting weather to shield their advance, miscalculated the impact of proximity fuses. Forests and snow meant to conceal infantry became liabilities as airbursts rained steel. Manteuffel's troops nearing Bastogne cursed the unseen explosions shredding their ranks. 6th Panzer Army stalled near Elsenborn Ridge, struggled to coordinate infantry with armour under constant artillery fire. Brandenberger's 7th Army, probing southern valleys, found road columns broken up by well-timed bursts. The fuse's high combat reliability forced German units to disperse, slowing their advance and exposing them to Allied counterattacks. Model's plan, reliant on rapid gains, crumbled as artillery exploited this technical edge. The proximity fuse, code-named POZIT, was a closely guarded innovation. In late 1944, it was authorized for large-scale field use in the European theatre, fitted primarily to 105 mm howitzer shells and 155 mm gun projectiles. Commanders enforced strict handling and fire discipline to prevent capture. Very low-altitude friendly aircraft were warned when VT airbursts were scheduled. By early January 1945, the German salient began to contract. Proximity-fused barrages paired with clearing weather and Patton's counter-thrust eroded Model's momentum. Artillery crews operating under grueling conditions maintained relentless fire targeting German troops in assembly areas and road columns. The fuse's ability to burst at low altitude regardless of snow and uneven ground gave American forces a decisive edge. As German assaults faltered, the Ardennes became a testament to the fuse's role, underscoring the fuse's role as one of several key factors in blunting the offensive. By early January 1945, the German salient began to contract. Proximity-fused barrages, paired with clearing weather, and Patton's counter-thrust eroded Model's momentum. Artillery crews in brutal cold sustained fire on German assembly areas and road columns. Low-altitude airbursts, typically around 20 to 30 feet, gave American forces a decisive edge. As assaults faltered, the Ardennes became a testament to the fuse's role in blunting one of the war's last major offensives. In the Malmedy-Stavelot-Staumont corridor, the 30th Infantry Division held key roads as batteries on icy ridgelines fired hundreds of POZIT-fused rounds daily, bursting reliably in the intended low-height window. German infantry, massing in woods, met barrages that negated concealment, while forward observers reported assaults breaking apart short of American lines. Ammunition remained tight, yet batteries still shifted tens of tons weekly to sustain fires. German commanders, counting on weather and terrain, miscalculated. Forest and snow became liabilities under airbursts. Near Elsenborn Ridge, 6th Panzer Army struggled to coordinate infantry with armor under constant VT fire. 5th Panzer Army's thrusts toward Bastogne slowed. 7th Army's road columns were broken up in the southern valleys. High combat reliability forced dispersion, sapping momentum, and exposing units to Allied counterblows. The Proximity-Fuze POZIT was a closely guarded innovation. Designed for air defense, its adaptation to ground artillery marked a tactical shift. Packed into the shell nose, its transmitter-receiver detected ground return and Doppler beat to trigger low-altitude detonation, typically around 30 feet for field artillery. Delayed in Europe until December 1944 to avoid capture employment on the Western Front, expanded rapidly under strict theatre control, with warnings to friendly aircraft about low bursts. By mid-January 1945, relentless POZIT-fused fires, Allied airstrikes, and Patton's advance compressed the salient. Able to burst low regardless of snow or uneven terrain, the fuse gave you artillery, a technical edge that helped break Model's offensive. By mid-January 1945, the German salient shrank under relentless pressure. Proximity-fused barrages paired with airstrikes and Patton's advance broke Model's forces. Artillery crews operating in brutal cold targeted German troops in woods and assembly areas where traditional shells faltered. Low-altitude airbursts, typically around 20 to 30 feet, gave American forces a decisive edge. As assaults collapsed, the Ardennes campaign highlighted the fuse's role in blunting one of the war's final major offensives. In the Malmedy-Stavelot-Stoumont corridor, the 30th Infantry Division pressed counterattacks as batteries on frozen ridgelines fired hundreds of POZIT-fused rounds, daily bursting reliably in the intended low-height window. Above attacking troops, German units retreating through wooded areas met overhead fragment showers that broke cohesion. Despite ammunition constraints, batteries still moved tens of tons weekly to sustain fires, while forward observers reported assaults dissolving short of American lines. German commanders, counting on weather and terrain, miscalculated. Forest and snow became liabilities under airbursts. Near Elsenborn Ridge, 6th Panzer Army struggled to coordinate infantry with armor under constant VT fire. 5th Panzer Army's thrusts toward Bastogne slowed. 7th Army's road columns broke apart in the southern valleys. High combat reliability forced dispersion, sapping momentum, and exposing units to Allied counterblows. The Proximity-Fuze POZIT was a closely guarded innovation. Designed for air defense, its adaptation to ground artillery marked a tactical shift. Packed into the shell nose, its transmitter-receiver detected ground return and Doppler beat to trigger low-altitude detonation, typically around 30 feet for field artillery. Delayed in Europe until December 1944 to avoid capture employment on the Western Front, expanded rapidly under strict theatre control, with warnings to friendly aircraft about low bursts. By late January 1945, relentless POZIT fires Allied airstrikes and Patton's advance compressed and then collapsed the salient. Able to burst low despite snow and uneven terrain, the fuse gave U.S. artillery a technical edge that helped break Model's offensive. By late January 1945, the German offensive ended in failure. Proximity-fused barrages, paired with airstrikes and coordinated counterattacks, destroyed Model's ambitions. Artillery crews operating under brutal conditions targeted German troops in woods and road columns, where traditional shells were ineffective. The fuse's ability to burst at 20 to 30 feet, regardless of conditions, proved a decisive factor. Official histories later noted the Proximity-Fuze as one key element alongside weather shifts, logistics, and Patton's counterthrust in breaking the German assault. Senior commanders, including General George S. Patton, publicly praised the funny fuse for its battlefield impact, while noting it worked in concert with better supply, improving weather after 23 December, and coordinated counterattacks. The Ardennes campaign, spanning 16 December 1944 to 25, January 1945, marked a turning point for artillery tactics. Field Marshal Walter Model's Army Group B with 6th Panzer Army under Sepp Dietrich, 5th Panzer Army led by Hasso von Manteuffel, and 7th Army commanded by Erich Brandenberger failed to seize Antwerp. 1st United States Army directed by Courtney Hodges and 3rd United States Army under George S. Patton repelled the offensive. Proximity-Fuze's compact radio devices, code-named POZIT, delivered low-altitude airbursts at roughly 20 to 30 feet, shredding German infantry in forests and draws. Their controlled employment became widespread, shaping artillery operations through the remainder of the campaign. In the northern sector, along the Malmedy-Stavelot-Stoumont corridor, the 30th Infantry Division solidified gains as batteries on ridgelines fired hundreds of POZIT-fused rounds daily, bursting reliably in the intended low-height window. German remnants retreating through snow-laden woods met overhead fragments that prevented regrouping. Despite sub-zero temperatures and tight ammunition, batteries still moved tens of tons per week to sustain fires, while forward observers reported assaults dissolving short of American lines. German commanders, defeated by relentless barrages, saw their strategy undone. Proximity-Fuses turned the Ardennes terrain against them, negating forest cover. Manteuffel's troops fleeing Bastogne faced airbursts that shredded their ranks. 6th Panzer Army, retreating from Elsenborn Ridge, faltered under constant artillery fire. Brandenberger's 7th Army, withdrawing through southern valleys, found no respite from well-timed low bursts. Model's failure underscored the Proximity-Fuze's role in breaking one of the war's last major offensives. The Proximity-Fuse POZIT became a cornerstone of artillery innovation. Packed into the shell nose, its transmitter and receiver detected ground return and Doppler beat to trigger detonation at low altitude, typically around 30 feet for field artillery. Restricted until December 1944 to prevent capture, its rapid expansion under theater control proved its value from air defense to ground fires. Warnings to Allied aircraft mitigated risks from low bursts, and gunners hauling shells through snow fired POZIT alongside conventional rounds, turning artillery into a precise instrument of disruption. By war's end, Proximity-Fuses were routine in United States artillery practice. Their success in the Ardennes disrupting massed infantry under cover set a precedent for future conflicts and cemented the Fuse's place as a quiet but decisive force in modern warfare.